everybody, welcome to the Midweek Check-in. This week, you guys, the scripture that is sticking out to me is our spot in Psalm. Every week we are in the book of Psalm, and this week we are in Psalm 61, and I'm going to read it to you. Hear my cry, O God, listen to my prayer. From the ends of the earth I call to you. I call as my heart grows faint. Lead me to the rock that is higher than I, for you have been my refuge, a strong tower against the foe. I long to dwell in your tent forever and take refuge in the shelter of your wings. For you have heard my vows, O God. You have given me the heritage of those who fear your name. Increase the days of the king's life, his years for many generations. May he be enthroned in God's presence forever. Appoint your love and faithfulness to protect him. Then will I ever sing praise to your name and fulfill my vows day after day. You guys, I don't know about you, but I notice when I read Psalms, especially David's, that he does a really, really good job of crying out to the Lord. He relies on God over and over and over again, and we get to read that. We get to read his process of going before the Lord. I think there's something that we can really learn here. I think it's really important that we are intentional about crying out to God. I actually think it's important that we're intentional about crying out to each other also. I think that sometimes we actually need to hear ourselves say things out loud. Sometimes there's actually also healing done when we do so, which sounds very counterproductive. If I'm focusing on things I'm crying out to the Lord about, things that are on the depths of me that seem almost like negative or focused on something that's not exactly light and cheery, maybe that seems a little counterproductive. But I'll tell you this, the things that stay deep inside of us, tucked away in the dark places that don't ever come out to the light, they actually can never be accessed by him. I mean, of course he can get to them, but what I mean is when we come into agreement with him, we actually become co-laborers, we offer these parts of ourselves before him. In fact, in Ephesians, Paul says this, but everything exposed by the light becomes visible, for it is light that makes everything visible. To me, this kind of means like everything that's inside of me, if I'm able to bring it up and out into the light, I can actually see what's really going on inside of me. And then he can actually have access to it. So I think there's a lot of healing power in this, in just doing that even before him. But I also think there's healing power in doing it before one another. I don't know about you, but if you've ever had a conversation with a friend and you've shared like, I've been really feeling this, kind of discouraged maybe, or just needing like some direction or wisdom or feeling just overwhelmed by something. Oftentimes when we share that with another, we realize that they might be experiencing the same thing, that we are not alone. Now we're sharing in that together. Again, bringing it up into the light for one another, to support, to carry, and also again, just so God can have access to it. I think what happens when we don't do this is actually our hearts get a little bit hard, and whatever is going on inside of us that we don't bring out to the light, it ends up coming out sideways. Right? When we're irritable and we're frustrated, actually there's probably something going on like, actually I'm really, really upset about this. Or I have a deep desire here and it's not being met. We don't bring that up and out to the light to share it with one another, or share it with the Lord. It actually comes out kind of sideways and we're a little prickly and we're a little grumpy and we're a little short-fused. Those things happen all the time, and the worst thing that can happen in that place is over and over and over when we do that, our hearts actually get hard. The harder our hearts are, he can't have access to us the way that he needs to in order to do the work, healing work, transformational work that he wants to do inside of us. And again, David did such a good job at modeling this. In fact, the way that David did this was he wrote about it. That's something we could do. We could write about it in a journal, perhaps. We could write maybe like a prayer journal and just be writing out all the things that are going on the inside of us. That's one way to get it out. And of course, we can do that in prayer also without writing. We don't have to write our prayers, but we can. Sometimes it's helpful. We can also just sit before him and just kind of dump it out, almost like stream of consciousness, like this and this and this, and he is there to hold and to catch it all because he cares that much. He also gives us community. He gives us trusted friends. Maybe he gives us a spiritual director or a counselor or a pastor that we can trust come before and say, hey, this is going on inside of me. I need to let this out. I need to let it come into the light because I desire healing and wholeness in these places. And then we can become witnesses for one another, do some healing work for one another, pray for one another, but also, again, his light is able to access. So This week, I challenge you. Let's be like David. Let's take a look at the Psalms, specifically Psalm 61. Pretty good place to start this week since that's the one we're on this week. And just see, how does David do this? How does he go about it? And maybe we can just practice and be a little bit like him. I mean, after all, God did say David was a man after his own heart. We can read that in lots of different ways, but I believe that one of those ways is actually the way that David approached God. He approached him just with unabandoned. He was so honest. He was totally himself before God, and he knew how much he needed him. And every single time he came back and cried out. Let's do that this week. Praying for you. I'm praying in this way. Let's be brave. We can do it. Let's go after healing. Love you guys. We'll see you next week.